Okay, so last week was basically orientation, and today we'll start. We'll start from beginning. Most of you, some of you, if you're from the last batch, you probably have seen this and you probably know most of it, but it's always good to repeat. So we'll start with very basics about software, what is software, and what is software testing, and things like this. And slowly we're going to move on to learn how to test the software product and things in those manner. Again, guys, welcome to IT Solutions. And so part one, basic intro to the software. What is a software? So each of the questions you'll be seeing written and the answer would be given two different ways. One would be plain English and another answer would be a little bit on the technical side, so that both sides is covered. Software is a kind of program which is used for operating computer and related devices. That's one way of answering. Another way of answering software is packaged code in an organized manner which operates hardware for a specific job. So I'm sure all of you are aware of software. And you can see example of software. Pretty much we're interacting with software nowadays every day, every minute. Sometimes we know that we are using a software, sometimes we don't even know, right? Softwares are everywhere. And we will be, after this course, we'll be a software testers. A good one, hopefully. So you can see example of software, right? Google, PayPal, Microsoft Word, iOS, cloud, everything. Under technical terms, software is called application, program, or system. Under business terms, software is called project or product. So when you're working in a project, let's say you got a job with Facebook.com. So in the red one, yes, I think I'm recording. If I hope, yeah, hopefully I'm recording. Is this what you wanted to ask?
Yeah, that's yes, fine. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for confirming. I'll share the recording after this. So let's start from the beginning. So when you get a call from the recruiter, they will not call you and say, hey, I have an application and I want to hire you for an application. They will call you and say, we have a project. We have a project we're working on or we're going to work on, and we'd like to interview you for that. So that project is nothing but that application or software. So that could be anything, either Google, Facebook, or any other project that they're working on. So under business term, again, software is called project or product, and under technical terms. And now you're hired and you're working in a project. You are already in the project, and within the team, technology team, now we're going to talk about when we refer to that application, when we are referring to that project, we're going to say application, program, or system. So things like this, important to note. Continuing with part one, what is application? Which is the same thing. Application is a program runs in computers and similar devices. What are some of the major type of applications? So if we look at different types of applications, there are many, but some of them, three of them, we should learn about. One is desktop application, two is client servers application, and three is web application. Web application is the most popular one, and that's where most of the jobs are, and that's where everything is moving toward, or if not moved already. Example of that desktop application. So desktop application, everything runs on one machine. Application runs in single memory, front end and back end in one place. Only one person can use. So for example, Microsoft Office. But so when I said everything is shifting toward web applications, so now if you think about Microsoft Cloud, I think, even Microsoft Office tools are accessible to multiple people. Office 365, I'm sure some of you know. So, so just to let you guys know, like, and give you an idea where industry is shifting. 10 years ago, desktop application was a big thing. Client servers application was a huge deal. But now, if you look at today, it's all about web application. Every single company, even if they were desktop some point or client servers application, they move to web application, and that's where your job is going to be. But it's good to understand the differences. So that's an example of desktop application. Now, if we talk about client servers application, so client servers application runs in two or more machines. Application is menu driven, limited number of users. For example, Slack, Skype, Microsoft Teams. So difference between desktop and client server application. Client server application is it has access to more than one person. Only difference is you have to have licenses or access. So let's say Microsoft Teams or Slack, if you're familiar with, or Skype, right? So each of the company, they'll be using their own version of Skypes. So let's say if IT solutions, if we buy licenses, if we buy, I think Microsoft Teams is a better example because we're going to be using Microsoft Teams. So if we have 50 students in the class, we're going to buy 50 licenses for our company, and we'll give out the licenses to our students. So only our students will be able to access Microsoft Teams, our version of it, our company's Microsoft Teams, but no one else. So this is like a good example of client servers application. But again, all of these now have a web version of it as well. So that's another example of how companies are shifting toward web application. You guys have feel free to ask questions if you have at any point, and I'm sure these are very basic stuff, so you probably already know. So this is the main deal, right? Example of web application. Application runs in two or more machines, URL driven. The important thing is URL driven, unlimited number of users. For example, anything is hosted on www, World Wide Web. What are some of the web application issues? So web application is used heavily from anywhere and everywhere, right? Facebook is an example. At a single time, people are joining from different part of the world, and like you and I would not know how many people joining at the same time. It could be millions. So we do have issues. Most of the issue comes with web applications. Hardware compatibility issue, browser compatibility issue, version compatibility issues, performance issues, and security issues. The last two are the most common issues and dangerous ones as well. Hardware compatibility issues, it's right now is not even relevant. Industries are very smart. We build application in a way that we don't see hardware compatibility issues. All the configuration is done prior to it, but we seen it earlier meaning early stage of the industry, like let's say 10-15 years ago, we used to see hardware compatibility issues, but now it's tested, it's configured, and we don't see such issues often. But the issues we see in browser compatibility. So browser compatibility, if you build an application, the expectation is that application works in every single browsers, every single major browsers the same way. Example, if you build Facebook should work on Chrome, browser, Firefox, Edge, Safari, mobile device, which is SOS, Android, every single platform and browsers the same way. This is where we see a lot of issues, browser compatibility. Often when developers build that application, let's say they use Chrome browser and they build that application using Chrome browser. Now that browser does not work in Firefox or Safari, things like this. So us as a testers, we'll be testing that application in different browsers to make sure that application works same way in each and every single browser. Do not assume anything. Do not assume that this worked in one browser, it should work in other. That's not how it works. This browsers are configured differently, built differently, uh, application behaves differently in different browsers. So we have to do thorough testing there. Now, version compatibility. Now, that's another thing. Each browser has different versions, right? You see every now and then the browsers are having newest version of the browser to add something, modify something, delete something, so on. So now here things gets complicated because each browser has so many different versions. Which one do we use for testing? And now even if we're testing with the latest version, 2 weeks later, that version may change. So this is where things gets complicated. Now your business has to tell you like, hey, we want to use this version of that browser. But usually it's a given that latest version should be supported. After that, what do we do? Is it one version back or two version back? If your company cares about it, they will let you know, hey, test latest version and one version back. So in that case, you would be performing browser testing, each browser testing multiple times, multiple version of it. Now the question is, how do you test it, right? When you go to your browser right now, you're gonna see the latest version only, right? You're not gonna see the one version back. The answer is there are tools, there are third-party tools that allows you to go back a version or two. So we could use those if your company really wants to test different version of the browser. But the most cases, latest version is good. Okay, the other issues are performance issues. So this is a big one, right? So you build an application is accessible from anywhere. Now, how do you control it? How do you ensure that your application doesn't break with maximum number of users? So every single application has a limitation. Now we need to know, not us as a tester, we are talking about company-wise, business, and the requirement-wise, we need to know how many users we should have our application supporting, right? And not crashing. And so it could be usually, thousands, unless if you're building a software, Facebook application that's millions. It depends on the need of that application. What your business would know what type of traffic it would hit. So they will give the requirement, and then based on that we would have to test. Now, let's say if an application hits its limit, now it's going to start acting weird. It's not going to load the page. It's going to crash. It's going to kick you out. It will X out. Things like this will happen. Some of you probably know, like, in 2020 when we were in the middle of the COVID, and those of you from New York, we had an application where we'd go and apply for unemployment, right? The unemployment portal was crashing. Millions of people were hitting that application at the same time. So that application wasn't built to support the entire New York for at the same time, right? So that's one thing, that you're using that application And the other thing is you're using that application at the same time, logging into that application at the same time. So a lot of you know, right? We had hardest time navigating through that application because it was having performance issues. So that's another testing we would have to do. And then lastly, security issues. So security issues, there are different types of security issues. There's one type is network security, and then other type is functional security. So functional security is so let's say you have a banking application, and that all of the banking application has logging features, right? So you would have to, in order for you to access that application, you need to have proper credentials to log in. You need to sign up and log in and then use that portal. Now, if somebody can hack that login and able to log into your system, that's a problem, right? So that's one type of security, functional security, meaning someone can go in and crack the code and then access that application. So that's a functional issue, and we need to test it properly. We need to test it in a way that it only works with the given requirement. It doesn't break with any combination of username and password or things like this. So we'll learn that as we go on with this course. There's another type of security issues that are network, right? Let's say you have an application hosted in US and US-based application, someone from China can hack into your network and access it and manipulate it, things like this. So that's another type, and usually we are not responsible for network security issues. There are different team that they work on it. They specialize in network security and network security testing. That's their job. We just need to ensure functionally your application is not breakable. No one can log in without proper signing up and having proper credentials, things like this. Any questions on this page? Okay, part 2. Basic intro to the software testing. What is software testing now? Previously, we were talking about what is software. Now we're talking about what is software testing. So it is a process of impartial technical investigation to ensure the correctness of the product. That's one way of answering. An easier way of answering, to meet the user requirement, to ensure the software really works as expected. Does the software meets users' requirement? Does the user like it? Is it what user expect? So in short, we test an application, ensuring that application work as expected. Before we build the software, before we test the software needs to be built. And that's another group of people, which are developers. They will be working on building that software. Now, before building that software, we need to have a requirement. A group of people has to tell us or define the requirement and give us that formal document, either soft or hard copy. Of course, it's soft copy nowadays. So there has to be a requirement in place for us to test, right? So our job is to make sure the requirement is matching, the application is matching with the requirement. What was defined in requirement is what's in the application. That's what we need to do, and that's what software testing. Okay, continuing with part 2. What is software quality or quality software? Similar thing, right? A quality software is bug-free, provide objective evidence, delivered on time, within the budget, meets user requirement, and it's maintainable. So of course, everybody knows when we test the software, we need to make sure software is bug-free and is giving obviously objective evidence. That's fine. delivered on time. So this is what I wanted to talk about. Not just testing it, we need to ensure that we're testing within the time frame, within the time limit that was given and defined. So that is very, very crucial in the industry, right? When we set a time frame, we need to follow through. We need to meet that deadline. Otherwise, it's going to be a big problem. Everything else you understand, right? Its user requirement is fine. And the other thing is maintainable. Now, just building a software is not good enough, right? We need to build a software that we can maintain. Maintaining meaning we can make changes in the future and it's not going to have any impact to the existing application. So remember when we say what is software at the beginning, we said it's a package code in an organized manner. So that's what it's mean, right? Not just building a software that works. We need to build a software in an organized manner so that it is maintainable. We can make changes in the future. We can maintain it. So that's what it's mean, and it's important to. So it's important that a software is built in an organized manner so that we can maintain it. Question can be asked, right, in your interview, why do we do software testing? So answers are similar, right? But we just need to understand like how that could come at you. You can simply answer like to provide confidence in the system, identify areas of weakness, establish degree of quality, and also to prove it's usable and operable. So a software, when it's built, if it's not tested, no one will be confident in that software or the system, right? Once QA, like us software testers, we go and test and sign off. We say, hey, we've tested it, it looks good. That's when the project, that's when everybody involved in that project will get confident in the system. So that's what it's mean, right? Without testing, they will not be confident in that system. The other tricky question is when do we test? So that's a big thing, right? When do we test? That's not a straightforward thing. But before we answer that, just understand software testing is a process-oriented job. It's just not simply go and start testing the application. It's not as straightforward. It's a process-oriented job. There are documentation involved, there are meetings involved, there are testing involved, there are planning involved, there are defects and reports and so many other things. So when do we do testing? So two things, right? Actual testing starts when the development they're done with that application and they give it to you for testing. That's when actual physical testing starts. But even before that, we start our testing process. So here, when the requirement is defined, we go and read the requirement. That's also a process of testing. So once that requirement is understood, we go and start our test planning. We start, like in everything you need to do your planning, we start planning there. Then of course we have meetings. Then we do many other things. Right now, if I talk about it, it will not make sense to you. And then we do actual testing when that application is available. So to answer that, when do we test? As soon as the project is given to go ahead, as soon as architecture is defined during development, once the code complete, once the system delivery is complete. So we basically, you can answer it by saying software testing is a process-oriented job, and we start our testing process very early stage as soon as project is given the go-ahead or architecture is defined or the requirement is complete. But the actual testing starts once that application is available to test. So two different things. You'll understand more as we go along in this course, but feel free to stop me and ask questions at any point. Let me know, guys, if I'm going too fast. These are just, I feel like it's very simple, so that's why I'm going kind of fast. This is something you need to understand. No need to memorize, but understand. Main purpose of software testing. Tricky questions, right? Main purpose of software testing, three things basically: defect finding, verification, and validation. So defect, everybody understands, right? Difference between expected and actual results. That's defects, right? You know, when you look at the application and look at the requirement, if it's not matching, that's a defect. Verification process confirms software meets the technical specification. Validation is a process that confirms the software meets the business requirement. We'll talk more about verification and validation as we move further in this course. Requirement. I've been talking about requirement for a while, and I'm sure you guys understand what is a requirement. So requirement, anything before you build, there must be a document defining what you need to build, whether if it's a car, a house, or a software product, right? You can't just blindly build something without proper guidance, proper direction. So requirement is nothing but that guidance and direction. And requirement is what you want from a system and what the system should do. Yeah, so basically, before you build a system, you should have a requirement, letting them know what that system should do, what that system should have. So when you get the requirement, first thing, so you'll get the requirement in a document or in a tool, depending on what your company uses. So it could be a software product that, so now in the industry, we have different tools, right? To create your requirement, to define, to assign that requirement to an individual and things like this. So depending on your company, you know, whatever they're using, you'll be getting access to it, and you'll be seeing your requirement. So it could be one big document, or it could be small documents, many small documents. So when you get the requirement, your first job is to start reading and understanding, analyzing and understanding the requirement. That's what you need to do. Ensuring, just because the requirement is written and is given to you, do not assume, like I said before, you should not assume anything. You just need to make sure that it's read through it, understand it, ensure that it's good. So requirements are defined by another group of people. They're usually called business analyst or product owner. So mainly it's business analyst. Business analyst is internal. They work with you. Product could be external. So they would be writing the requirement, but more often than not, there are mistakes in the requirement. There are gaps in the requirement. They are also human being, right? So they make mistakes when they write requirements. So your job is to make sure that that requirement makes sense. What they have written is logical, it's unique. So when you analyze the requirement, what are the things you are focusing on? Ensuring that requirement is unique, precise, testable, consistent, complete, not ambiguous, and also bounded. So these are the things. First, of course, you need to make sure that, you know, the information there, it makes sense. Then that requirement must be unique. So when I say requirement has to be unique, you're building a product, you're building a software product. And if that requirement is not unique, then the chances are you're going to be building, you're going to be making a lot of duplicates. So let's say if they have written same requirement or similar requirement in multiple places, now chances are your developer will build similar things, similar function, similar functionality in the same application multiple times, which does not make sense, right? So that's what I mean here. Like, requirement must be unique. In one document, right? There will be hundreds of small sections and small requirement. It's a one big document having many small requirements. So for example, like I mentioned, login page, login functionality, that's a requirement. Once you log in, now you have your portal, right? Your account information. Everything you see inside that, that's small requirements, right? So there is no reason to build login field or username and password field twice, right? That's what it means here. And also it may not always be straightforward duplicates. There could be similar functionality they would be defining, but you could ask questions saying, hey, since we have it there, do we need it here? Things like this. And of course, this right here requirement is so important. Like this is where everything is driven from. So we need to spend good amount of time here understanding the requirement, understanding that it is what it's supposed to be, then only we can start our work. So please, when you're in actual project, spend good amount of time in the requirement before you move on from it. Next thing, we need to make sure the requirement is clear. If it's not clear, then what do you build? Then the other thing is every single requirement must be testable in order for you to test. What it means, let's say, if they just say like, we need to have a login functionality in our application, and they don't give you exactly what we need to have within that login functionality. For example, what type of username it should support, what type of password it should support. How would you test it, right? What is the limitation on these two fields? How would you test it? So small example, right? Let's say they said, okay, build us a username and password field. Now, and they did not specify anything else. How would you test it, right? All of you know that username and password, whenever we are going to sign up to an application, they define it, right? Username should be within 6 to 10 digit character. Password should be similar thing. Let's say 8 digit, must have an uppercase, lowercase, number, special characters, things like this. Now, let's say in your requirement, they mention none of this. Now, how do you test it? It's impossible. Do you test it with 8 characters or 80 characters? What is the limit? What are the different type of characters it should or should not support? You can't test it. It's impossible. So that's what this means, right? Then of course the requirement should be consistent and complete. It's all same thing within the same frame. If it's not complete, what type of limitation you should give? Not ambiguous, meaning not confusing, basically. Bounded, so we need to have boundaries, right? When we have an input field, there must be a boundary. They need to define the boundary. What is the boundary? So if we do not have this, we can test a requirement, and that requirement is not complete. Okay, any questions before we move on from this and talk about SDLC?
Nope.
Cool. So now, now we talked about this, right? We understand what is a software. Now we understand what is application. We understand how to test and things like this. We're going to start our process, our journey with software development lifecycle. So part 3 is SDLC. SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. It is the entire process of formal and logical step taken to develop a software product. So this one has 3 answers. Same thing, is serving same purpose, just written differently so that you can understand. So let's read through it. So second one, software development lifecycle is the overall process by which the entire software is developed. So this is good. Like the second one is the easiest way of explaining what is SDLC. So SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. This is the entire process by which the entire software is developed. Feel free to read the third one. So the reason we have many answers so that you can understand sometimes like we don't understand a question one way, so we have written it multiple different ways. So when a software gets built, we have team, right? We have multiple teams. We have software testers, which is us. Then we have software developers, which a group of people, they do coding. Then we have business analysts who gathers requirement and defines requirement for us. And then we have project owners who is responsible for our overall project. Then we have architecture who are architects, who are responsible to define the architecture, meaning doing the mock-up and drawing and things like this. And then we have clients. Like clients are nothing but the people who wants us to build the software, who are responsible to pay for that application. So understanding SDLC is very, very crucial. Understanding the entire process behind SDLC is important, and the team behind SDLC. We are just part of it. So SDLC has different phases. If you look at SDLC, what are the different phases of SDLC? We have the requirement phase, planning phase, design phase, development phase, testing phase, UAT phase, deployment or production phase. So we're going to look into a diagram here. Part 3 SDLC. Okay, so this is same thing, right? Different phases of SDLC. So we're going to look into this diagram, SDLC diagram. If we look at this diagram, we have right here. We have right here is a requirement phase. I've been talking about requirement from very beginning of this class. So requirement phase is where requirement gets defined, right? This is where requirement gets defined and understood. And then once that is done, just like everything else, we have a planning phase here. In planning phase, this is where we do planning. Once the planning is done, then we move on to design. Designer would do the design and mock-up and things like this, and then develop. This is where the actual work gets done. This is where developers writes their logic so that application can work. And once they're done with this, we do our testing. This is where we would be sitting as a tester. System testing phase, that's where we'd be sitting and doing our testing as well as our testing process basically. Then we have UAT phase. In UAT phase, UAT stands for user acceptance testing. So this is where client will test their application. Right, we do our testing here, but before they make the payment and accept that application, they will do one round of testing here. If everything looks good, then it goes to production. Application goes to production. So let's say Facebook, I've been keep referring to Facebook because everybody knows it. So let's say Facebook was built 15 years ago. I don't know when, but I'm just assuming 15 years ago. But the actual process of building Facebook probably started much earlier than that, at least 2-3 years. And they spend that amount of time building their application internally within this box right here. You see this box right here internally. While they were building their application there, no one had access to it. You and I did not know that this is being built. We had no idea. Some of you may have idea toward the end because they came out and had news announcement and things like this. But even if you knew that Facebook is being built, you would not have access to it until it goes to production. Outside that box, in production. When you're in production, that's when you have access to it. You can play with it, you can work with it, you can see it, right? That's production basically. And then we have other phases, cutover phase and maintenance phase. Cutover phase is really not relevant anymore, because in cutover phase, what used to happen, we used to give actually we still do some user training. So in cutover phase, we used to do user training. So when an application build a public facing application, it's not always user friendly or self-explanatory. It would require one to give you a training or a demo or walkthrough. So that happens in cutover phase. Also, release notes, right? So we also give release notes or any other type of documentation. Release note is what gives you guidance to how to use that application. It's similar as user training, basically. And in the past, like we talked about hardware compatibility. Remember, you guys, we talked about hardware compatibility. So before, if we had any compatibility issues in cutover phase, we would resolve it basically if there are any issues. Or any plugin or things like this needs to be configured, it gets done here. Maintenance phase. I hope you guys remember we talked about an application should be built in a way that is maintainable. So in maintenance phase, we maintain that application. And if there are any modification requires, there are any upgrade requires, we do it here in maintenance phase. So that is your SDLC. Any questions?
Can you please explain UAT phase, please?
Yeah. So UAT here, if you look at the UAT, if you look at the UAT, right? So this is user requirement. Requirement gets defined here, right? And requirement gets defined here, and then application gets accepted here. So now when we build an so when we build the application, someone has to pay for it. Someone has to give us the requirement. So usually, we have clients come into the IT companies. So let's say, so it works two ways. I'm going to explain one workflow today and one workflow another day so that you are not confused. So let's say IT Solutions is an IT company and we build softwares. So now, but we don't build software for us, we build software for other people, right? Anybody can come in and say, hey, you have the people to build the software, build me a software. We're gonna say, yeah, sure, but give us the requirement. So they're gonna go back and start writing up the requirement. Like let's say I want a product, where so let's say a trading platform. So they can say, okay, we want a trading platform to be built, and they would define that requirement and give it to us. And here we will have clients, right? Clients will come in with the requirement. We'll have clients sitting here. Then we will have our business people, business analyst here. So our business analyst will be sitting. Business analyst is responsible to receive that requirement from the client and understand it from there. And timeline will be defined here. Like, once they give us a requirement, we'll say, okay, it will take us 6 months to build, and it will take you, we'll charge you 2 million or whatever it is, right? And all of this gets defined here in requirement phase, right? Now, when that is done, right, client gave us the requirement, we gave them the timeline and the budget, what everything is done, right? Good. Now, moving on. So business analysts will come from there and now start working here in planning phase. So he or she will take that requirement from the client and finalize it here, in a way, converts it here in a way that we in IT company, we understand, right? Now, once she's done with the planning, planning of, and she will send that document to designer here. Designer will do their design, developers will do their development, tester will do their testing, and we are the final gate here within that company, right? You see the box here. This is the internal box, right? Right. This is the internal box. So we are the final gatekeeper. We're going to say, okay, we have tested it. Everything looks good. Now we're going to tell our managers, hey, send it out. We're done. We don't need to spend any more time here. Now here, we go here trying to push it out. Now client will come back and say, hey, hold on. They will say, hold on, we're not done. They will come back and say, remember we give you requirement here. I want to make sure that that is what you're delivering before I make my final payment and accept it. So they will come back here and they will start testing either by themselves or they will hire a third party independent verification and validation team, IVNV team, who are not from our team, who are not from our company, is external. So that client come back here from requirement phase to right here, reassuring that their product, they like the product, that's what they wanted, and it's what we built. Does that make sense now?
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure, brother. Any other questions?
What's configuration phase?
Okay, so configuration phase is where all the documentation gets stored. Final version of each documentation gets stored for the record, basically. Every phase has its own documentation. And of course, the big one is the requirement document. It gets stored here, basically. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper into this. And understand who sits where and does what. Please take notes, guys. This is important that you understand this. So user requirement phase. You'll have your own keywords in user requirements. I'll try to give 3 keywords for each of the phases. Please take notes. So once you understand this, you're good to go. So in user requirement phase, we have requirement, and that requirement is called URS. So if you look at that phase itself, you will understand what URS stands for. URS stands for user requirement specification. So that URS is a requirement driven from users. They're giving a requirement which is written in plain language, plain English language here. They will come in and sit with business analyst and finalizing the requirement timeline and the budget, basically, right? So if you your 3 keyword would be here, URS, clients, and business analysts, right? So understand this. This has 3 keywords. URS is what's the user requirement specification coming from the clients. And of course, clients are sitting here and business analysts. So these are your 3 keywords. Now moving from user requirement phase to planning phase. In planning phase, that URS gets transferred over to planning phase, and the URS gets converted to a technical document, more technical document called SRS. So SRS, it stands for System Requirement Specification. Now, a similar thing still is the same requirement, only difference is business analyst is adding business logic behind it, technical terms behind it, so that we understand IT people, we understand it better in our own way, right? So now in here, you have also three keywords. Anyone is able to tell us what are these three keywords if you're paying attention? Anyone? In planning phase, what do you think? What are three keywords?
Requirement,
What type of requirement?
system requirements.
Keep going, brother.
One more would be, what would be, giving users access
URS.
or URS, yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, we're going a little bit deeper here, right? So now, first thing first, right? That user requirement, user URS getting transferred over here, right? So now we have URS. And what are we doing with the URS? Converting to SRS. So we have URS, SRS, and who's doing all the work behind it? Business analyst, right? So your three keywords, URS, SRS, and BA. BA stands for business analyst, right? Think logically, it's very, very simple. Now, here in planning phase, URS got converted to SRS. Now that SRS is the final version of the document for internal folks, right? Now, from the planning phase, that SRS gets shared to designer, developers, and testers. Now, in designer, right? In design phase, your keywords would be SRS and of course, designer and graphical design or mockup. So in design phase, designer sitting there with system requirement specification, which is SRS, and doing what? Doing their design, right? So three keywords would be designer, actual design, and your SRS. These are your three keywords. In development phase, can someone give it a shot? What could be the keywords in development?
Coding,
Can you go ahead?
Developer, they will start secure the code and build the code for the applications on the development phase.
Security,
Yeah, I mean, you guys are right, but give me three keywords. What are three keywords?
Network compatibility.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
You're going too deep. We are just looking for
security for the app to make sure
SRS.
nobody can hack it.
no, don't. That's too far ahead. Let's not go there. Right now, we're looking at the SDLC diagram on a higher level. Who sits where and does what? So similar thing, right? You know, developers right here, you have SRS here as well, right? Like I said, the requirement gets shared in every single phases. Now here we get the requirement, right? So we have the SRS, and who's sitting here? Developers, and doing what is coding, right? So your three keywords are SRS, developers, and coding. Done. That's it on a higher level. That's it. If you want to talk about exactly what they're doing, what type of testing they're doing, what type of coding, that's a different ballgame. We don't need to worry about it now. And we don't need to worry about it for each and every phases. We need to worry about it for us. When it comes to testing, we would need to know exactly in details, what do we do? What are the different processes? How do we do? How do we execute all of this? And we'll learn about it. All right, so let's give it a shot for testing. Let's see for testing. Give us some keywords.
Could I go again?
Mm-hmm.
STLC, Jira, and test row.
Partially right, but again, you're going too deep. Think logically. Who's sitting here with what, doing what? Three things.
Okay,
That's
right.
it.
So the QA people are sitting in the testing phase and they will try to understand the requirement of the software or application first. And then they will create a plan, test plan. And then after that, it will go to the test cases, like what will we do in that testing? And then set up a testing environment, then execute the test. So I think that's all we will do in the testing phase.
Yeah, that is right. On a more deeper level, but on a higher level, if we talk about here, again, we have the SRS document here, right? System testing requirement, SRS, system requirement specification, sorry.
What does SRS mean again?
System requirement specifications. So that's the requirement gets built in the planning phase, basically. SRS system requirement specification. So we have SRS here, and then who do we have here? We have testers, QA, right? Doing what? Performing our testing. So your three and testing, SDLC stands for software testing life cycle. So you can simply say we have your three keywords would be SRS, testers, and SDLC or system testing, basically.
What about test plan?
That's more details. That's not now. That's when, you know, we get into SDLC. On a higher level, right? SDLC, software testing lifecycle. Okay, so that's that. Moving on to UAT. We talked about UAT. Let's give it a try here, guys. What are your keywords in UAT?
Third-party testing,
Uh-huh.
SRS,
Uh-huh.
See if
Tester
people could hack
development.
or break through what you made.
Yeah, so basically your keywords here are very similar to testing, right? Only difference is, so you have SRS, you have UAT, and they're also performing testing. So three keywords: testing, UAT, testing, SRS, and user acceptance testers, basically. Three keywords here. I just understand this logically. If you understand it, you're good to go. Moving into production phase, in production phase, really your application goes live. So really don't need to have many keywords or anything here. This is very simple, right? You know, in production, if everything is good, if the proper planning is done, proper designing is done, proper development is done, proper testing is done, proper UAT is done, then application goes to production. Application, see all of these gates here, right? Everything has to pass through these gates. Once that is done, then software goes to production. And in production, you use it, you take advantage of it, things like this. Like I said, cutover phase is not being used heavily, but if it's being used in a company, then they would be doing user training, user manual, any other configuration that requires will be done here. And maintaining phase is where you do upgrade, software upgrade, update, things like this. Configuration phase, again, in configuration phase, all the softwares, all the final version of the documents get stored here. So configuration phase, it's becoming much easier nowadays with different tools that we have available. So we'll be using a real tool like a real project, and we'll be also doing a real project so that before you go start working, you're comfortable, you know exactly what you're doing. So we'll do that as we move forward with this group. Now, that's pretty much SDLC for you. Do you guys are you clear? Any questions, concerns, suggestions, or anything? What do you guys think? All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. Next week, the homework would be, so ideally you would be going into, you should get access if you decide to continue, right? You should have access to Google Classroom soon so that you can have access to your homework and stuff like that. So you'll be getting notifications or invite from IT Solutions so
Everybody-
that,
Everybody will receive it tomorrow morning. I have a classroom set up for them already, but everybody will get it tomorrow morning. They should be added there.
okay. So once you get your access to Google Classroom, just go here, and then for me it's showing to review, and for you I think it would show to what does it say? I forgot. To do, I think, to do or something like that. So you'd click on this and then you will see your homework, and then you would be submitting your homework. It's pretty straightforward. You'll get assigned work, and then you'll just need to complete your work. So that's one area. And the other thing is Microsoft Teams. So we have, if you're seeing my screen, so we have main group, right? So this is our main group. We're 144 students, active students right now. So we'll be adding you to this group, and all the discussions happens here. If you're no longer active or somebody is not involved, then we would eventually remove you. Everything is license driven, everything costs money, right? And you need to take advantage of it. And if you're not utilizing it, then what is the point, right? So that is a main group, right? After this group, you'll get assigned to one of this group, and these groups would be something like this. We have different teams, right? So we have Team Mango, we have Team Sunrise, we have Team Wolf Pack, we have Team Hazards, and then we have Team Hustlers, 5 groups. So depending on how your group, so right now let's see, we have 25 people. Let's say 20 out of 25, maybe 20 serious candidates. So once we have final number, so we'll split you guys in multiple different teams, and then you will be getting access to your appropriate team. So either if you're in Sunrise or Wolfpack. Now here, the groups are much smaller. It should be 5, 10, something like this, 15. The reason we have higher number because we have admins and IT solutions managers here, and your leads and things like this. So then you will be working in the groups. You'll have your own group. Once you're done with this and you're ready for hitting the job market, then we'll enter you to pre-job market group. And then once that is done, you will be in the I don't know. I think that's it. That's where the journey ends. Once you're in pre-job market, unless then you become an IT solutions admin or lead. Okay, yeah, you then you get admitted to the lead if you become a lead and things like this. So that's the journey, and that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna stop recording, and then we can talk for a minute or two, and before stopping, stop record.